He said if reelected, Trump could assassinate his political opponent so long as he cited a statute or constitutional provision for doing so.
The dissent is correct, and I too fear for the future of our country.
Even though we might all be assassinated any minute now.
This was a very sensible decision that I think most lawyers familiar with this area expected.
A BBC presenter now calling for Trump to be murdered by Joe Biden is under a lot of scrutiny. Fury over there in the UK. Don't know who this guy is, but here is a photograph of him. His name is Mr. Aronovich. He dropped a tweet after the Supreme Court came out with their immunity decision, and here's what it sounds like. He's a well-known Radio 4 presenter, breached a bunch of rules, and said something like this. He said on X right after 5 p.m., he says, if I was Biden, quote, I'd hurry up and have Trump murdered on the basis that he is a threat to America's security, hashtag SCOTUS. Well, so cue up the Secret Service on that one, huh? So yeah, that's pretty curious. And murder obviously means criminal, because that's what murder is, right? Different than, let's say, homicide, where a person dies, but you could have a homicide that was lawful, but not in a murder case, right? Murder is with malice aforethought. So this guy apparently is from the UK, so probably doesn't understand the difference between the nuances of American law, but that's clearly illegal. And so just on the face of the tweet, it's a stupid tweet, because as we saw, the Supreme Court decision already told us that the president doesn't have immunity for non-official acts. Do you think murder is an official act? No, it's not. So that is obviously something that Biden would be prosecuted for. And according to the Supreme Court standard, it would be an open and shut case. But they're demented, so they really enjoy this. They are fixated on it. We've seen a bunch of this stuff all over the place after the immunity decision came out, and guys like Marc Elias are also melting down on this. So we'll go through this and see what Marc Elias had to say. But the hashtag suggests that his wild opinion was sparked by the immunity decision, as we know, responding to a journalist who accused him of having TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Mr. Aronovich doubled down and he lashed out. He said, did you see the Supreme Court ruling, Jack? Or were you too busy with your head up Nigel Farage's derriere? Which I think is how they say booty in the UK. If I was Biden, I'd hurry up and have Trump eliminated on the basis that he's a threat to America's security, hashtag SCOTUS. So the BBC got approached for this. I wonder if he'll be prosecuted over there. In another follow-up tweet, someone attempting to add a community note, Mr. Aronovich said, you know, this community note should be interesting, but before you go to the effort of writing it, try reading the arguments, the ruling, and the dissent. An hour after posting the tweet, he said he told one critic that it was satirical. Oh, just a joke. Well, we'll see if he gets prosecuted. So he said, there is now a far-right pile-on suggesting that this was not satire. I don't know. So I'm deleting it. Yeah. If nothing else, though, it's given me a map of the daftest people on this site. Okay. So little jokes about eliminating the president. Here's what this guy looks like, which is about what you'd expect. All right. So Aronovich's tweet sparked instant fury and backlash. And it's not just a joke, okay, because they now say that the president has that power. Here's Marc Elias, who is a Democratic super lawyer. They love this guy, or did. I think he might be on the outs now, but who knows. But here he wrote this. How bad was today's Supreme Court decision after Trump got immunity? He said if reelected, Trump could assassinate his political opponent so long as he cited a statute or constitutional provision for doing so, which is obviously not true at all, because Marc Elias is one of the dumber people over there. Assassinate? Is that part of president's official responsibilities? To assassinate members of their political opponents? A lawful thing? Not to my knowledge. Don't know where he got that from. But if Trump has that power, well, then Joe Biden has that power right now, doesn't he? We're in real danger. Ah! So petrified. So let's listen to him screech about this for just 46 seconds. We can do it.
Going into this case, Donald Trump said he could assassinate his political opponents when he was president. He could stage a coup. And people thought that that was hyperbole and over the line. It is time we start to take him literally and seriously, because today, a majority of the U.S. Supreme Court did just that. In fact, Donald Trump, if returned to the White House and in the Oval Office, assassinates his political opponents as part of a plan to effectuate what he believes is federal law. If he stages a coup and cites a provision of the U.S. Constitution, he will, in fact, be immune from criminal prosecution. The dissent is correct, and I, too, fear for the future of our country.
All right, so they're having a rough time over there. Marc Elias saying we're all going to get assassinated, I think. He said, today was a dark day for democracy and a disgraceful one for the Supreme Court. Donald Trump didn't just evade justice on January 6th. He was given a roadmap for dictatorship and retribution if he's elected in 2024, which is crazy because Joe Biden has that same roadmap right now. And Joe Biden, by the way, has already created much more of an American dictatorship than at any other time in our modern history. He bypasses the Supreme Court, totally ignores them, opened up the borders completely, has committed us to basically 2 massive proxy wars, and a third one's brewing. We have constant criminal prosecutions now. Steve Bannon just got imprisoned. Peter Navarro's already been there. They're trying to throw Trump in after the fact. We live in a world now where America has political prosecutions openly and aggressively, and half the country, less than that, is seemingly behind it. So Eric Swalwell, remember that guy who made Bang Bang with Fang Fang, a Chinese spy? Representative says, don't panic on the Trump immunity case, okay? Even though we might all be assassinated any minute now, says Jack Smith is going to argue that Trump's actions were not, quote, official acts. And there's precedent on this from a J6 case that I know a thing or two about that was already upheld by the DC Circuit. So this is not a Trump victory. This is cope. It certainly means the criminal case, though, doesn't get tried before the election. Oh, no, Eric Swalwell. But Smith can articulate for the court what the official acts are and then proceed. Of course, Trump can then take that back up to SCOTUS. Civil side cases have rejected that. What he did was an official act. All right, so Swalwell having a difficult time as well. But Biden came out. He spoke just a little bit about this for about 4 minutes. Here's a short excerpt of his speech.
The answer about what happened on January 6th, before they asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it.
We want him to be able to do those things and respond accordingly. And here is another clip that has gotten 1 million views over on X explaining another take.
Joe Biden, after cannonballing into an empty swimming pool on Thursday night, came out tonight and spoke for 4 minutes off of a teleprompter. He's good for 4 minutes today, as long as somebody else wrote it. After having this completely tone-deaf sort of announcement coming out of this meeting that you wrote about with his family this weekend, where his son, the notorious influence peddler and crack addict, Hunter Biden, says, you got to keep going. Also, they were hanging out with Annie Leibovich, the photographer, which I wasn't even aware she was taking mugshots now. This entire thing since Thursday has been one tone-deaf political disaster after another. Tonight, he comes out and attacks the Supreme Court and says, oh, the president can now do whatever he wants. The same guy, by the way, whose centerpiece of his speeches is, the Supreme Court tried to stop me. They blocked me, but they'll never stop me on student loans. I don't know what they are doing, because they don't know what they're doing, and no one in America knows what they're doing, and that's why Donald Trump's beating his brains in right now.
That's right. And that is some good reaction. But this was Bill Barr, who was telling everybody that the claim of assassination is basically hysterical and stop being ridiculous. Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr even saying this decision is appropriate.
This was a very sensible decision that I think most lawyers familiar with this area expected, which is this went up to the court in a very abstract posture, which was the government's very broad assertion there was no immunity whatsoever. What the court's saying here is no, there's absolute immunity when he's acting directly under the Constitution, carrying out a function under the Constitution. There is presumptive immunity when he performs an official act, and the government has the burden of showing that it can prosecute him for that without impairing the executive function. And finally, there's no immunity for unofficial or private acts. And I think the practical effect of this is that the district court is going to do what it really should have done at the beginning, which the government really should have had it do, which is do the analysis so the facts are going up to the Supreme Court.
Want to do that.
So as a practical matter, there's not going to be a trial of this case before the election.
Yeah, there will not, and it's going to probably be appealed again. So it will go down to Judge Chutkan. She will say these are all unofficial acts outside the scope of the presidency. He'll appeal it to the Court of Appeals. It'll go right back up to SCOTUS, and we'll do the whole thing over again. So it is just amazing. They are whining and getting hysterical about this immunity decision, even though there has been functional immunity in the United States for 234 years until Donald Trump came into office. Now that he's here, they've decided enough already. American principles no longer matter. We're just going to shatter all the precedent, all the norms, because our only mission in life is to stop Trump.